Shalom, Kal Halalim La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakha HaKudash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, who rule well, who I learned this truth from, and salutations and blessings to you elect, starting with 144,000 on down. So, the Spirit's on me again to do another history lesson, and this is going to be a little bit over over different places, a little bit all over the place, but it's still tying in with the King Arthur. We're gonna get into the Wildmen a bit, some more information that I found from this book that we've used over the years, but I've looked into a little bit more, and I found some information. It's called Ancient and Modern Britons or Britons. Okay, in this book I found out about this book through the apostles, okay, the elder apostles years ago, where they mentioned this book. So this is by a person named David McRitchie. And whether he's a Jake or not, this guy was, he was actually really pissed, and he was clearly racist. But nonetheless, his point of view didn't matter, because what he found was contrary to his point of view, right? He found people of a swarthy, right, of swarthy complexions, dark complexions, right? He found those people to be the ruling class, of Ireland, Scotland, England, okay, and different parts of Europe. So let's begin. This is page 45. Okay, I'm going to read the highlighted sections. You're more than welcome to freeze it and read the entire page, but it says the Iberians are styled swarthy and curly-haired. The word swarthy is rather elastic. Now here comes that serpent talk. For although literally Schwarz, yet it is taken, I fancy, to mean something not quite so dark as the color of a Negro, in its usual acception, perhaps this distinction does not exist. So this guy's trying to say, they were called swarthy, but not for the reason of them being dark skin as a Negro. That's foolishness. We know what swarthy. You even brought it out here, Schwarze, which means in modern day terms, that's a byword for nigga, pretty much. Okay, that's all that is. So going down here, and he also tries to make the point of dark-skinned wild men, but it says that the wild tribes of Ireland were black men is hinted by the fact that a wild Irishman is in Gaelic a black Irishman. Okay, but we're going to get to that later. Let's skip on page 54. England has never been invaded from Morocco during historic times, nor even is this dance the property of the people of Morocco. It is peculiarly British. And yet of Moorish origin? Yes. But the date of its introduction into Britain by the Moors was the date of the landing of the Pictish people, whensoever that may have been. Our language still retains the memory of their presence under this name. In Shakespeare's time, the audience at the Globe accepted the word as meaning a black man, and either then or later on it became tautologically extended into blackamoor. The common people of the country are not likely to have known much about ultra-British Moors, not enough at any rate to have made the word an everyday term for a black man, nor can the Moors of heraldry be explained sufficiently by the theory that the founders of families bearing Moors as supporters and Moors as heads, as crests, had won their spurs in assisting the Spaniards to expel their Moors. The bearing is too common among ancient codes to admit of this explanation, and the heraldic representation of a Moor or Negro man does not suggest Grenada. The features are ugly and irregular, and the hair, though longer than that of a pure Negro, is woolly. The head is encircled by a fillet or chaplet, and there are pearls pendants from the ears. The complexion is, of course, black. Such men are indifferently styled Moors and Saracens. Their presence in the armorial bearings of ancient families can only be due to the cause which made savages, wild men, or woodmen, where they called them Woodwose, so common. So look, it says their presence in the armorial bearings of ancient families can only be due to the cause which made savages, wild men, or woodmen, aka you Edomites, so common among the supporters of old North European and Scottish shields the exploits of the founder of the family in the long conflicts with the people of heathenness. So he's really going, in and out, trying to explain different things. But look, he's bringing out the point of these wild men in not so many words. Okay, they overthrew the Moors. That's what he's pretty much summing up. But he's not saying it outright. And and really, like I said later on, he's really trying to say, oh, the wild men were dark skinned and this and that, but they weren't dark skinned, because in the coat of arms, if they appeared dark, which we're going to show you the Woodwose coat of arms, those are Edomites that had so much dirt on their face that never washed. Okay, that's who he's talking about as dark skinned men, but those are Edomites. Okay, you guys never washed. So let's go to page 62. The savages, wild men, or woodmen of heraldry, sometimes represented as white men, sometimes as black. And that's false. Okay, very false. But nonetheless, the savages, who are these savages, man? You Edomites. Okay, the wild men or woodmen of heraldry, sometimes represented as white men, sometimes as black men, are almost always naked, with the exception of a wreath round the head and another round the loins, that they became part of the cognizance of certain families in token of conquests over real savages, who he calls real savages the Moors. Okay, like I said, this guy hates niggas. Okay, this guy he wasn't too fond of you Israelites. Okay, but nonetheless, his work proved otherwise, and that's the whole joke. That's the funny part, and that's the beauty of the Holy Spirit. Real savages is indisputable. One notable example being that of an ancestor of the present Duke of Atholl, who received his supporters and other more substantial honors for defeating the army of a lord of the Isles. Okay, now page 32. It still survives in the word blackguard, which, though now applied very loosely, is more strictly defined by Halliwell as meaning a nickname given to the lowest dredgers of the court, the carriers of coal and wood, the laborers in the scullery, and etc. Its Scotch form, blackward, is given by Dr. Jameson as a state of servitude to a servant, in support of which he quotes Richie Monaplease. So that you see, sir, I hold in a sort of blackward tenor, as we call it in our country, being the servant of a servant, and this is going into how the term black, it denotes that it didn't denote skin color. It denoted a person of a low stature, a low on the social system. Okay. It says, Jameson also says that a black is a vulgar designation for a low scoundrel. Okay. A scoundrel, low scoundrel. Salakia. Right. For a low scoundrel, corresponding in the sense to the English blackguard, while in Halliwell's dictionary I find blacktan stated to be a term used in speaking of gypsies in Kent and perhaps elsewhere. The same thing is seen in Scottish Gaelic. A girl of the lowest rank of peasantry is a dub child, a black hussy. A strolling female or gypsy is a dub shoeblack, a black vagrant, and Armstrong also gives an obsolete word in Irish Gaelic as signifying the vernacular. In this country, as in the East, a word meaning white is attached to the ruling class, and black is synonymous with dependency and servitude. And this is a very, very good point, man, because prior to, the 16, 17, 1800s, you didn't have these classifications and designations of white, black, black male or white male. If anything, white, it represented, again, what he just said, a high class, righteousness, good. When you look up these, the synonyms for white. Now, when you look up black, it meant what? Negative, low, pretty much what he said, servitude. So that's word spell, that's you know, they're casting spells on you people to call yourselves these things. The reason of this is not far to seek, although now used without the slightest reference to the complexion of either caste. The words assert themselves as distinctly as words can to be survivals of a period of white conquest, when a black was a serf, just as that word and slave may be and are derived from conquered Serbs and Slavs. Even at the present day, white in American slang has the idea of high qualities attached to it, though in this case, it is likely that the usage started afresh with the practice of Negro slavery in modern times, and he's correct. That whole understanding of white and black was changed in America pretty much. It came from teaming with this guy, Johann F. Blumenbach, an anthropologist, Teemanite. He classified the world into 5 color categories, white, black, yellow, red, either 4 or 5. Okay. But later on, you had in America, they actually termed, classified, oh, he's white, he's black, through law, through law, and then by indoctrination later on, you know. Um, but this is a good point that he's bringing out. It's a very valid point. Now one thing I just want to show, man, before I go on, look at these Edomites, right? I typed in, did Wildmen have hair all over? Yes, Wildmen in medieval and historical accounts were often depicted as having hair all over their bodies, man. And that's you Edomites, bro. He was saying, oh, it's it's sometimes black men, and no. That's you Edomites, right? Genesis 27:11. And Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, behold, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. And let's look up this word hairy. Sha'ayar. See, a he-goat, a buck, a sacrificial animal. Satire may refer to a demon-possessed goat like the swine of Gadara. Okay? A he-goat, by analogy, a fawn, devil, goat, hairy, a kid, rough. Okay? So that's the Edomites, man. It has nothing to do with a black wild man. You're talking about these people, man. These people, he's trying to call the Moors the savages. Okay? These are the real savages. This is the legacy, okay, of you Edomites, man. Look at this guy. He's all hairy. Okay? That's not a costume, man. All right? He appears to be dark skinned, but it's just dirt. He got hair all over him and he's dirty. Okay, this is the legacy. This is you Edomites, man. Talking about noble, honor, royalty, Now this could be Jake's, because you see this guy's trying to take off. It looks as to be a costume. These guys, I guess, were dancing, and this was a wild man, performance. You see the clubs that, as you see in this image, the club, okay, was a signature of these wild men, the club. I don't know, I guess that was their weapon. But look at the people, the royalty, they're dark skinned. A lot of these were, look, you can see the neck and stuff. It was, the eyebrow over here. That's due to iconoclasm. They whitewash these images. You can see the royalty, they're dark skinned. Now these guys, like I said, it could be Edomites or Jakes in costumes, but Nevertheless, you see, this is all iconoclasm. These were all dark-skinned people. As you can see, some of them still remain dark. Okay, but a lot of these images were whitewashed. So this is interesting, as you see up top here. You know. Okay. So this is you Edomites, man. This is your legacy. The Woodwose people, the Wildmen, the people of the forest. See? Hair all over, man. Hairy. On all fours. Okay. There's your woman. So this is what the real wild men is going into. And yes, when the wild men, they worship Pan. Yeah, the wild men or shepherds and farmers who lived in the mountains worship Pan, which he was a god of the forest, a god of orgy and pretty much just revelry and fun, you know, represented as a he goat. Okay, so let's go back. Page 154. This giant is styled the Black Oppressor and seems to have been of the same genial nature as the Black Knight of Ashton under Lynn. He very frankly informs Perudur that for this reason I am called the Black Oppressor, that there is not a single man around me who I have not oppressed, and justice have I done unto none, and justice have I done unto none. You know, and these are titles that the Edomites would call these Jakes, or the Black Oppressors, the Welsh Black Oppressors. Okay, page 156. The Welsh tales, it has been said, are full of black giants against whom the Arthurian warriors fought. And an inference from this is that Arthur's followers were white. This is what he wishes to believe. You know, we brought out a lesson yesterday about the legend of Arthur, King Arthur, you know, and how there were Moors in his ranks. And really, when you go into it, King Arthur himself was a Celt. You know, if you will, he was a Celtic Iberian, which the Iberians were swarthy, dark skin. All right. It says, because the blackness of their foes would not have been particularized had they been of the same hue themselves. Now, the Arthur of history is said to have been himself of swarthy Silurian. Right? You see what he said? He wants him to be white, but look what he said. He said, now the Arthur of history is said to have been himself of swarthy Silurian blood. Now, Silurian, again, I believe is Celtic. Let me get that. Silurs. The Silurs were a powerful and warlike tribe or tribal confederation of ancient Britain. Hey, look at this. According to Tacitus's biography of Agricola, the Silurs usually had a dark complexion and curly hair. Due to their presence, Tacitus believed that they had crossed from Spain, and at an earlier date, the dark complexion of the Silurs, their usually curly hair, and the fact that Spain is the opposite shore to them are an evidence that Iberians of a former date crossed over and occupied these parts, showing you the Iberians were dark-skinned, these Silurians were dark-skinned with curly hair. Jordanes in his Origin and Deeds of the Goths describes the Silurs. The Silurs have swarthy features and are usually born with curly black hair. Okay, Slovakia. Curly black hair, but the inhabitants of Caledonia have reddish hair and large loose jointed bodies. They are like the Gauls or the Spaniards. Another off statement, but this is Wikipedia. I'm very surprised they're showing you this, because I didn't even, this is through the spirit. I wasn't even investigating it like this. That's through the spirit. Brakteal Shai. So clearly you can see that we're not crazy, bro. We're not just making shit up. So that shows you, right? That shows you, look, King Arthur, according to some legends, King Arthur was the leader of the Silurians, a Celtic tribe that lived in South Wales. And the Silurians were dark-skinned, swarthy, with curly hair. So the Celts were dark-skinned, swarthy. The Iberians were swarthy. We read all these things. All these dots connect, man. You know? But again, when you research King Arthur, he was taken and raised up as a Latin, you know? But the people with him, his knights and all that, They were Silurians, Celtic, dark-skinned, swarthy. Okay, so there you go, Silurian. But the author of romance, let's read that again. Now, the author of history is said to have been of himself swarthy, Silurian blood, but the author of romance has never been wholly identified with him. What does romance mean? When you look up romance, it literally means Roman-like. So, in another way, they're trying to say, look, in iconoclasm and Renaissance fashion and Edomite supremacy, we depict him as an Edomite. Of course you do. Just like you depict Yahushua as an Edomite and all the rest, of the Israelites, right? But the author of romance has never been wholly identified with him, and indeed he is altogether difficult to localize in time and place. The legendary Knights of the Round Table may fairly be assumed to have been of the civilized, Christianized. And what does that mean? They weren't swarthy. Again, this guy tries to connect the dots that the swarthy weren't civilized; they were savages. The Christians were Israelites, buddy. The Byzantines, the top people, okay, the emperor, the Praetorian guards, all those people, they were dark skinned, swarthy from a long time ago, man. Okay, now this is an image here of a black Norman knight and his lady. Okay, I always joke that this guy got a Benjaminite stance. Okay, this guy, brothers are Benjaminites. You know what I mean? It says, so late as the 10th century, 3 of these provinces of Scotland were wholly black. And the supreme ruler of these became for a time the paramount king of transmarine Scotland, right? Because what does that mean, transmarine? So Israelites were always involved in maritime trade, maritime merchandise, trading, making money off import export, various different resources. Okay, so pretty much that's all I had on that. There's one more thing I actually wanted to bring out, just on the point of all these terminologies. You had this person named Dub, King of Scotland, right? Is the medieval Gaelic form. The modern form Dub has the sense of dark or black, especially in reference to skin color, sometimes anglicized as Duff, Mac, Malcolm. Okay, and in modern English, Black Malcolm's son was king of Alba. He was the son of Malcolm the First, which was a great king. So how is this guy named Black, dark skin, and he came from this guy? This is all iconoclasm, I just wanted to bring that out because the term Dub, why was his name Dub, is especially reference to skin color. And this is from Wikipedia, man. Anyway, hope you're edified with that. Kal Halalim, La Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash, Shalom.